You are listening to the Kelly Confidential podcast with Kelly Wilkes. This is episode 26. Welcome to the Kelly Confidential Show, where we talk negotiation essentials and those crucial conversations empowering extraordinary women. Real women, real issues. Let's jump in. Hi, friends, and welcome. I hope you're having a great week. On this episode today, we're talking about women and money, and I have a terrific guest I'm about to introduce. But first, I want to chat about my own journey with numbers, and I'm not even talking about money yet. I'm just talking about numbers in general. Because if we're not comfortable with numbers, that discomfort will linger and spread into our money decisions. Now, growing up, I don't recall ever having an affinity towards numbers, or money for that matter. When I had it, I spent it. And that was the extent of the relationship I had with money until I got much older. And in school, I was always more interested in social sciences and English. I loved reading and story writing. And I really did struggle with math and science in junior high and high school. Algebra was just totally alien to me, and I hated it because I couldn't crack that egg as easily as others. And I do remember the boys in my algebra class in particular seemed to really cope better. But I pressed on, and I was an average student in math, but it really held me back when I pursued my degree in computer science a few years later because you had to have strong technical and numeracy skills to program code. And in order to meet the degree requirements, I had to successfully pass at least 2 coding courses, which was, these were Java and C++. Yeah, I know, old school. But it was hard. It was a struggle. And I hated that part of my degree. You know, the coursework was intensive. It was so detailed and grueling. And it was only because we had peer groups that I had some help to learn the lessons to overcome my many, many compiling errors. And I mean, many. But tenacity won out, and I graduated with honors. But, tenacity is exhausting, and it just doesn't need to be this hard for others. So, yeah, I'd say it was really only in the last 10 years that I started to become much more comfortable with numbers. And now they feature in all of my business decisions, as well as in all of my reports, my product outputs, my collateral. So when I'm leading projects, for example, you can pretty much plan with predictability that I will share numbers, stats, percentages to support, whatever I'm yammering on about. Why? Because it grounds the information in measurable data, but also it was a personal promise I made to myself a few years ago that in all of my business decisions going forward, I would follow the numbers, that I would ask myself, what do the numbers say? Because the numbers don't lie. And when you're negotiating, when you're building your business or your personal finances, you need to be able to understand those numbers. And by happy coincidence, as my numbers strength grew, so did my confidence. Or is it a coincidence? According to a study commissioned last April by the UK's National Numeracy Organization, women are significantly less confident with numbers than men and report greater negative impact on earnings, progression at work, and career choices from not having basic math skills or qualifications versus their male peers. And importantly, the research also showed that confidence had a direct and crucial part to play in navigating and improving numeracy. So if women want to grow their businesses, want to grow personal wealth, which is so important in how we can influence our world, our family, our communities around us, we need to embrace the numbers and pursue learnings from those carving a path in this space. So on that topic, and in our continuing theme about new beginnings and revolutionizing the way you tackle 2024, on our show today, we have a special guest, Christine Walsh, who is joining us to talk about women, money, and the new face of power. Christine Walsh is a wealth generation money coach, revolutionizing the way women access financial independence in their businesses and their lives. Christine is a speaker, author, and master money coach who partners with women to increase their income while maintaining their integrity through mindset work. She has over 25 years of successful financial leadership experience. And on our show today, Christine is going to share with us some terrific topics like why women's contribution to the world through financial leadership is so crucial right now, how to overcome conflict with money and negotiation for better positive results. And we're going to hear a little bit about her secret money letter, which is a must listen, and some other practical advice to help women on their path to more confident money building. So let's jump in. Christine, I'm delighted that you're here on the show. I have been looking forward to this since our last conversation. And yeah, I'm just really excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Kelly. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm also excited to have the conversation with you around money, women, negotiation, and who knows all the other little things,
many things. Yes,
come out of it.
Yes. If our first conversation was anything to go by, we're probably going to have to, restrain ourselves. But I have really been looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a great show. And we were introduced virtually in an email late last year. I want to say it was around October timeframe. And I think we both had really busy schedules. And then we finally connected, I think again through email in December, and spoke in January, early January. And it was such a revelation. And I was so energized after that conversation with you because I thought, oh my gosh, this woman is carving her path and we need to listen and follow her because she is doing what we all need to be doing. And yeah, so I'm delighted that you're here and people are going to be able to listen to what you do and how you've done it and really help to galvanize women in their confidence with money. But before we tuck in, let's start with you and your background and how you ended up in Steamboat in my native Colorado, which was a real delight to learn about. So yeah, tell us a bit about where you came from, how you ended up in Colorado, and yeah, let's start there.
It's good that we're starting here. I'll put it that way, because eventually your listeners will hear some New York-ese come out of my accent if I don't tell the story of how I came from New York City to Colorado. I grew up in New York City, so again, you will hear every so often some New York, although I might have, after 19 years of being in Colorado, maybe it's panned out a little bit. I don't know, or smoothed out. But I was raised middle class in New York City. My parents are born and raised in New York City. I grew up there. Growing up in New York, you think you have everything at your fingertips, which you do to some degree, but it's on some level very cloistered in a way. We stuck in our home neighborhoods. We didn't branch out. Of course, we were running the city and stuff like that, but we had our core group and everyone sort of did the same thing. My dad was a New York City firefighter. My mom was a secretary. They really wanted a lot more for, it's like the American dream, for us as kids, me and my brother, to do the next thing. And so they really pushed us to go into business and study business. And so that's what I did. I remember telling my mom, I've always been a fashionista, if you will. I love clothes and styling and colors and bringing things together in that aesthetic. And I remember telling my mom around 16, 17, when I was deciding, where am I going to go to school? Just kind of the startings of that. And I said I wanted to go to the Fashion Institute of Technology in downtown Manhattan, and study merchandising and buy for Bloomingdale's and do all that stuff. And she stepped back and said to me, look, Christine, why don't you go to business school and then you make a lot of money and you can buy all the clothes you want? And so the first Would I kind of say no? I mean, we have a lot
Yeah.
of no's, and we'll talk about that as we go through the show. But that first like hitting of no, like no, that dream's
Hmm.
not happening. I mean, I chuckle about it now because it's the evolution of where that went. I did end up going to business school. I worked down on Wall Street for 12 years. Um, but that first kind of no in my
Hmm.
formative years really set the trajectory of how I ask for things or what
Hmm.
I need. So I know we'll dive deeper into that in a little bit, but to kind of fast forward through into my 20s, I was in my mid to late 20s when 9/11 happened. And in the financial world, I wasn't working down in lower Manhattan when 9/11 happened, but I was in the financial arena and had work down there, and I was working up in Midtown. And 9/11 had a profound impact on me. I hadn't had any uh, massive family death or trauma or anything like that. And of course, that 9/11 wasn't just a New York City event; it was a worldwide event, and it shook us at all our cores at some level. So much about innocence, I think, was kind of taken away for many of us, and so forth and so on. So, in retrospect of that happening, I realized to the degree where I said, okay, I thought New York City was everything to
Yeah.
me. It
The center of
was,
your world.
it had
Yeah.
it all. Exactly. Like, where would I go anywhere else? It's the best city in the world and all this stuff. And I realized there was more to living than that. And it wasn't that I was afraid to be in New York City, although I remember at one point, whether it was 9/11, 9/12, 9/13, just being in the city and feeling like we had a target like on our back, I guess, to lack of a better phrase. And so, but for the most part, I never felt afraid. It almost like there was this energy of there's more out there to see. And so I was always a skier. Grew up skiing upstate New York, and decided to um, go on some ski trips. And I ended up coming out west and then going back to New York several years in a row. And one year I just said, you know what? I'm going to quit my job. I had a corner office overlooking Central Park,
Wow.
the big title, making great money. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to give it up. And Kelly, like, I think about looking back on those, 19 years ago, making that decision and saying, what was the catalyst? I was 31 at the time.
Hmm.
So I had lived, I wasn't super young. I wasn't old yet, but I was in that era of what do I want? And started to look at that. And I think there was just this divine hand behind me that said, go explore. There's got to be a better way, or there is a better way, or let me, curiosity. And I think what is important for us as women when we're making decisions that feel uncomfortable, feel scary, is tapping into our courage. And I think that that's going
Hmm.
to be really, really important as we move through these years that are coming ahead of us as we step into our own financial leadership as women.
Hmm.
Because the courage pulls us through any of the fear. And that's probably what was behind my back, just kind of moving me west across the country.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I had never been to Steamboat Springs, Colorado, which is where I still live now. But a friend of mine had lived there, and she invited me to visit her, and so I moved out and quit my high-paying, high-profile portfolio management job at
Wow.
Alliance Bernstein. I had a boyfriend. Kicked, I shouldn't say kicked him to the curb. I let him go. I think I tried to do a long-term relationship, but a long-distance relationship, but that did not work.
Yeah.
And
No.
then, of course,
Well,
leaving
and
my
a total
family.
lifestyle, total lifestyle change. I
Absolutely,
mean, Steamboat
absolutely.
Springs, for people listening, it is, it's away
Yeah,
from any real metropolitan hubbub, never mind
absolutely.
Manhattan.
Absolutely. It was a big change, and it's been so much. It's been so much to me. I don't think I could have made the decisions stepped into my courage, stepped into my individuality without moving away from, and I love my family dearly. And
Mm-hmm.
I had to step into my own truth. And that was the start of it.
That's so much of that is, we could spend a whole session just on that alone, but just really, yeah, resonates with me. And I think it will with other people as well. When you step outside of where you've come from, just to get that perspective.
Yep.
And the perspective is enriching because you
Yes.
learn in that process about yourself and your new surroundings. And it's a very brave thing that you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the foundation of my money journey too, in a way. Like, everything's safe here. I mean, we'll talk about this, but it's us being money being an identifier and equivalent, or for many as safety and security. When we take the risk, and calculated risk, grounded risk, but we take a risk, it becomes, to use your word, more enriching. It becomes more where we can step into that relationship with money in a more profound way. That's really what prosperity is about. It's not just having more money in the bank, because that's not going to necessarily, I always joke around, like, imagine walking down the streets of Manhattan with a briefcase of, $3 million in it. You have all the money you need right in that briefcase. How safe would you actually feel in a dark alley in New York City? So, there's something beyond money just for money's sake. And I think women have the ability, the capacity to understand that, because we're more, I shouldn't say this, that we're more driven than men. I mean, more purpose driven than men, but there's something about that I think is fabric to our lives as women that we bring to the table, and is our superpower. So
I love that. I love all of that so much. And I want to hear more about that, especially your perspective on the sort of the vibration that's happening in the world right now. And we'll definitely, we'll come on to that because I want to talk more about that. So you moved to Steamboat and you settled down into Steamboat.
Yes.
And then where did your life go? Then what happened?
Well, I, as you would do in a little ski town, and where high finance isn't such a thing, I became a bartender.
But what a great place to be doing it! My God, amazing!
So I was
how fun.
Yeah, it was. I went from, heels, stockings, I mean, at that time we weren't necessarily in power suits by any means, working woman style, but having, slacks and pants and jacket, to jeans and slip-on shoes, and, having my hand with one in a beer, one in a wine. And in that work, I realized I'm just not cut out for bartending. I mean, it was a great place to meet a lot of people in a small town. I'll put it that way.
Definitely.
And actually, the head of the rugby team, Michael Hurley, he knew I had a finance background. He was a real estate developer in town, and he tapped me to help him.
I didn't even know Steamboat had a rugby team.
Oh yeah.
All the Brits over here will be going, get in.
So he said, "Hey, Christine, I need somebody with helping financial controller." So then I got out of the bartending, which is great, because I was a 9-to-5 kind of girl. So, and I got back into finance and really worked in the entrepreneurial operations. I started to use my accounting degree again, which is what I, studied with, and just was working with a lot of different businesses in town subsequently after that. So what I noticed in that work was how many people, we're a microcosm, it's a small town of a lot of different businesses, and seeing stress and seeing how we're going to make the payroll. And it wasn't, again, coming back to that idea of it's more than just the numbers. And I at the same time was going through my own personal financial storm of kind of the shoemaker shoes, where I was helping other people with their finances, but not looking at my own. And
Right.
so, really, that awareness and kind of moment of, Christine, I can't be not looking at my own stuff. So I had to really have a deep dive conversation with myself about my own money situation. And it ended up around 2009, 2010. We lagged in the housing crisis here in the United States about a year or so in this area. I lost my home. I had two homes at the time, a rental and my own personal home. I
Mm-hmm.
lost one to foreclosure. I lost my job.
Oh my
I
God.
was in real estate and it had dried up.
Yeah.
And I went on unemployment. And I said, wait a minute, I'm supposed to talk about the shame and the
Yeah.
embarrassment that I felt. I didn't even tell my parents. I made up some fabricated story. I mean, again, I'm like a 34-year-old, 5-year-old woman at this time. Like I'm like lying to my parents about my own financial situation. And I'm supposed to be the money expert. I was supposed,
Yeah. But that, I mean, to be
So
fair, that was a devastating time, wasn't it, for so many in the U and over
yeah,
here. That I
yeah,
remember, through my family in Colorado, there's foreclosures. It
yeah,
was terrible. It was
yeah,
so bad.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And
Sorry,
that was
continue.
my
Yeah.
own not understanding myself and my own decision making and conscious decision making that got me into not even being aware of what could happen with some of these risky loans with the home, the second home we had bought. So, all that to say, that's when I decided, okay, wait a minute. It's not just about the numbers. I got to look at this in a deeper way. There's got to be something else. And a friend of mine was like, Christine, you're kind of falling apart. What's going on? I'm like, I'm all fine trying to like keep it together all
Oh,
on the
bless.
outside.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know what? I have a friend. He's a financial advisor. Why don't you go talk to him? And I remember going up to talk to him and I was a nervous wreck because I knew I was going to have to, well, he would have expected me to share what was really happening. And I couldn't really get it out. Actually, there were tears started to come down my eyes because
Oh, bless.
I didn't really need a financial advisor. I needed someone who would listen.
Yeah.
Just be like, it's gonna, are going through some stuff.
Hmm.
Let's take away judgment around it. Let's just breathe and let's start fresh. And there's nothing, everything you've done to this point, there's nothing that we can do about it right now. We're
Hmm.
just going to start here at this new line. And
Hmm.
that's what I uh, want to impart to people that I talk with, are obviously the audience here, but just even like out in the greater collective. Whatever's happened in the past with our financial matters,
Hmm.
it doesn't matter. We get to start again. We just need
Yeah.
to make that decision. And we
Yeah.
we stand in that and we reconcile and we get to move forward. And so that started the journey of where I am today with my own business and financial mentorship and coaching, helping women, mainly women entrepreneurs, grow their businesses in a way that's beyond just the dollar amount. It's about actually stepping into their own
Hmm.
inherent abundance, prosperity with the bank account to match.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's as you mentioned a few minutes ago, it's not the wealth isn't just about the cash. It's not just about the money. It is the prosperity. It's the ability to influence their lives and have some immediate say in it and
Yeah.
in what direction it goes in. It's more about the resource that it
Yes.
produces for them. Um, and it's so interesting what you said about needing somebody to just listen.
Yeah.
And you didn't actually need his advice because you're a seasoned expert. You knew what you were doing. And, again, so many people got caught up in that whole collapse there and here. But fascinating that you had that perspective and you knew that it was more about having the connection, having the conversation, being listened to so you could regroup and galvanize your new path and all of the learnings that you took from that. And what kind of sparked you to take it in a different direction and to really work with women? What was that?
I think women, and through my own journey, I was like, there's something inside of me that's calling out to reclaim my choice, my power. I think we all have that. Men, women, we just have that within us. But women, we haven't had, again, I may be speaking in broad brush terms to a degree, but I want to speak to the collective energy that I've experienced myself and have seen as I've done this work for the past, 14 years or so and studying it, and then having my own business for the past 7 and really working in depth with it with women, is that we just haven't had the role models to know how to navigate through financial paths for ourselves. And so
And financial difficulties.
financial difficulties, financial decision making. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
actually in the household here in the States, there is a stat that says, I think 75% to 80% of financial decisions made in the household, like day to day, are made by the women.
Yes, that is
Or,
true. Consumer decisions to spend. Yes.
Exactly. So there was something in me that was saying, you know what, there's got to be a better way. How can I look at this differently? And I was at rock bottom. So I really didn't have anything else to lose.
Yeah.
I was like, where else can I go with this? And it really was in the personal development world, and you hear that word empowered often.
Mm-hmm.
It was an empowered, it came from inside.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's courage. Maybe that was I'm not taking this anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That, we've seen that in our societal landscape often, where women come together and say, no more.
Mm-hmm.
It's not happening anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not accepting that. And I think that that's what is needed now. And it's not a power over anyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's power under, it's a power with.
Yeah.
And that I'll use the word generative here, because that's where I see the most impact, the most ripple effect that can happen to actually improve our global collective. And generative to me is the win-win-win. It's I win, you win, we win. We all both ride the tide.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And I agree with your statement about it being about balance. The equity of both parties, both sets of voices having an opportunity to be heard, and closing the gap.
Yes.
And I think so much of the marketing, business marketing and financial marketing is gender biased. It's very packaged up in a way that appeals to men and really polarizes women, I think, and has done for decades. And that's part of the problem as well, which is why we have to try harder to reach women, to say these tools, these resources, these things that we need to strive for are for us too.
Exactly.
It's not just for the boys. It's for all of us to pursue.
Yeah. And we will all receive the generosity of that, the prosperity of that, as again, global community. They say, again, I could probably grab the specific stats or something like that, but they say most articles written for women about money are about saving, budgeting. I want to say coupon cutting, but that's probably not right.
Oh God.
Something along those lines, but like
That will send me over the edge.
but articles for men about money are increasing revenue. How do you increase revenue? How
Yes,
do you,
of course. How do you grow
make
it?
more money? How do you grow,
Yeah.
all of that? I'm like, and that's where I say, like, maybe part of even me speaking here today is that sort of, aren't you kind of just pissed off?
Yeah.
you know,
100%.
you
So
know,
over it. So
yeah,
over it.
like, come
And it
on.
stands out so much more now. I feel
Yeah,
like I see it everywhere. I see
yeah,
the suit in the
yeah,
ad.
yeah,
I was on an app the other day. This is a brief tangent. I was on an app the other day and it had a little button for support. You
yeah.
could click the button if you needed help, and it was a dude in a tie. And I was like, does this mean that only the guys get help? Like, what is this about? Is that meant to encompass everybody? But anyway, I digress. But
It was the tie. It was the tie that put
it
it
was
over
the
the
tie. And I see the marketing everywhere.
Yeah,
And that tide has to change. And so, so important the work that you're doing, because money is such a critical resource and an enabler for so many things that women need in order to move themselves forward, move their homes forward, their children, their families, and their community, and
absolutely.
to getting closer to a seat in the boardroom if they want, or in PTA or a political seat, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
It's a critical enabler, and
yeah,
we should be going for it.
yeah.
Um, and then I do really want to mention your book, because I really enjoyed it and I'm still enjoying it. But I don't want to jump the gun too much. How did you then? How did you then take your business into really teaching and imparting your wisdom onto others? And um, and what was the decision then to move into your book, which I want to talk about as well?
Yeah. I, again, was listening a lot to women and pulling information and hearing where they're coming from. And I have an expertise. So my background is accounting and finance. So there is a
Mm-hmm.
certain level of, I'll just, some examples, budgeting, or, on a personal level, looking at what's coming in and what's going out, looking at making decisions, investing, then on the business side of things, looking at P&Ls and looking at balance sheets and looking at cash flow. So pulling that in. And then again, my own study of the energetics of money, the psychology of money, our
Mm-hmm.
behaviors. And I think that's probably at the root of it. I'm such um, I love human behavior. I love
Mm-hmm.
understanding people. It's sort of like being at the airport and just being able to sit there and watch people and how they interact in this, strange land of travel and stuff.
Yeah.
So, um, and realizing that you can't have one without the other, like they are intertwined. And I think they're becoming more and more intertwined. So this is a holistic approach to finances for sure. And I think women, including myself in my own work and my own experience, bring a robust, like 1 and 1 equals 11. Or there's
Mm-hmm.
bringing both aspects to it creates a really robust movement towards wealth,
Mm-hmm.
um, generativeness, money in general, just creating money. And that's why
Mm-hmm.
that was my decision. I was like, you know what? I just can't just talk about just the P&Ls or the
Yeah.
budgets, or how to save money, and cut back on getting your Starbucks coffee or your
Yeah.
tea. How do I it's bridging both, and I think we
Yeah.
need both.
And
That's the
change the
whole.
mindset.
That's the whole.
Yeah.
There is belief systems. I mean, we grew
Mm-hmm.
up with inheriting a belief system from the people,
Mm-hmm.
the caretakers that took we were in their environment.
Mm-hmm.
Me growing up, grandparents, Great Depression, parents, 50s, 60s war era, and then here we're post-pandemic. It's like, wait a minute, we're working with old models of how to deal with finances
Yes.
as women.
Yeah.
They need to evolve. We're evolving.
Yeah.
Goodness, what's going on in this world with between AI
Yeah.
and economies of scale, politics. We can't be using those old models. And
Yeah.
so I'm just I feel like, have a little flag up front, like, hey, this might be a way that works. I believe it. It's created a lot of internal wealth and
Yeah.
external wealth for me. Move forward, and I'm still on the path. There's no doubt
Yeah.
about it. There's no doubt about it. And so bringing that information to the book,
Mm-hmm.
um, "Be the Queen of Your Money," is really us standing in our own power, which may mean I don't know, which
Mm-hmm.
may it's saying like that power can be, yes, I do know, and I don't know. Who can
Mm-hmm.
I connect with? Who can I talk with?
Mm-hmm.
How can I learn?
Mm-hmm.
And being in that willingness and
Mm-hmm.
courage, no doubt
Mm-hmm.
about it, to learn more about ourselves, about money, how we interrelate together.
Yeah. Um and there's so much to your book, well beyond the academic parts of it, the topical parts of it. It's about the mindfulness, and there were a couple of themes that really stood out to me, which I want to mention. I also want to mention that there will be some listeners who will want to get your book, which is available on paperback and Kindle.
Mhm.
And you can't get Kindle over here.
Okay.
So if they go on to Amazon UK, Kindle is rarely available for a lot of books. So what they need to do is just log on to Amazon.com and just order the Kindle edition there, and of course, it will just go straight to their Kindle app. So don't be daunted. You can do it. Just go through Amazon.com instead of Amazon.co.uk. But there were a couple of really interesting themes that just really resonated with me. So the ones that stood out to me in your book were the no culture and the concept of the shoulds and the shame.
Mm.
And I was wondering if we could just talk about that a little bit. And I've got a couple of others, but those just really stood out to me.
Yeah. I mean, we know growing up as kids, no matter where you're from, a lot of
Yeah.
no's happening. A
Yeah.
lot of no's. No, you can't do that. I mean, for some of us, might have been the first word we learned. Um, and as I shared with my story with just growing up and wanting to go to a certain college and my mom saying, no, don't,
Yeah.
and listening as the
Mm-hmm.
good girl that I was, that's what we take on. And that no, I perpetuates the shame.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's shame breeds, as we know it, just Brene Brown's work, it breeds in
Yeah.
silence. And so when we hear no in all the different ways, in
Mm-hmm.
grand ways and small ways, it perpetuates shame. Why would I say anything? And so
Mm-hmm.
then why would we ask for more? Right
Yeah.
here, you talk, so much and bring so much to the table about negotiation
Mm-hmm.
for folks to ask. Why? We don't know how to ask. We
No.
forgot how to ask. Although it's necessary. I mean, at one point, we're young infants, we could ask without even using words. We would
Mm-hmm.
cry or have a little tantrum or something like that. And then we have our conditioning placed on
Yeah.
us as we get older and
Yeah.
realize, oh, no can be risky. No can mean lots of things in lots of different ways that
Mm-hmm.
are dangerous. And I want to respect that too, because it can be deeper than just, no, you're not allowed to go to that college and go to this one.
Yeah.
Um, so understanding our where shame kind of can evolve from that no culture. And really
And
those
yeah.
probably came from just fear of the people before us
Mm-hmm.
in protection, not to reconcile that right here and now. That's not what the point is, but
Yeah.
just the spirit of understanding and potentially the invitation to acceptance of that.
Yeah. I think it's so important as a concept to understand what it does to us. And we talked about this before. And this, it just lands so well with me in the things that I talk about around negotiation. Because we've absorbed this no for so long, and it diminishes our sense of worth, over time, so that we don't reach out and we don't take those steps and we don't take more risks because there's a question of worth and a question of shame there. And over time, it really is diminishing of all things, I think, if you don't take a moment to really reflect on that and think about that and recognize that you don't need permission to be great at what you're doing in your life. You don't need to ask for permission for that. And I think that's something that we need to tell ourselves, and especially when it comes to money. And those critical resources. So it's fascinating, and I'm so glad that it's in your book. It's so important. And you also talked, and I really appreciated this in your book as well. You talked about making intentional decisions, having some mindfulness, having self-awareness of what you're doing and not letting it just be a coincidence or you're just sort of coasting, but being intentional. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, that's the work. That is the work for sure. Intentionality, I think within our mindfulness, when things for me slow down, when I come back and bring it to the present moment to make a decision, whatever, if that's with my business, if that's with my finances, if I slow down time and come to a present moment, I feel like I have some spaciousness to actually check in with myself about what do I want versus what does my husband want? What does my parents want me to do? What does my financial advisor want me to do? What does my boss want me to do? What is mindfulness for me? And leaning into intuition, leaning into intentionality has brought me closer to my own desires, knowing them, feeling them, and going after them. And it's so subtle mindfulness, and obviously we think a lot about it, and it feels like, well, not, how does this actually help business and increase business? But we can have those conscious decisions being made when time slows down, present in the moment, and make a decision from our own truth.
Yeah.
Who can argue with that?
Yeah.
And we build courage. We build trust within ourselves. We build what we need for the next step, resiliency. I mean, we have tons of resiliency for many reasons, and then we can leverage that to actually move forward, really, because it's about how are we move in action. I think we're all designed for more life and increasing life and life force energy and all of that. And money's a conduit to that, because it's we're not just having the money for the money. The money's coming in, going for something else.
It's going out.
Yeah, it comes in and it's creating more experiences in our lives. It's creating an emotion, perhaps. And so the mindfulness is that first layer of it, and it's a challenge for some of us because for me, when I started with meditation and bringing that in, I was like, I could sit for about a minute.
Yeah.
And then I'll do 90 seconds. And I would challenge myself, and that is the work. That's why I started with, this is the work. It's really sitting with our own thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
and not letting it go unchecked, like our
Yeah.
decision, go by default.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And thinking about mindfulness and self awareness and being present in our decision making, you've mentioned about women's contribution in the world through financial leadership. And I love this topic and why it's so crucial right now. Because there's so much happening right now. There's a frequency, I call it. You can sort of feel this vibration bubbling where women seem to be really engaged. Really, the hustle is really happening. You can see it. And yet, other things are happening that we don't seem to be in control of. And I'm wondering if you can talk about your thoughts there and what you mean when you say, that our contribution through financial leadership is so essential right now.
Absolutely. Our women, as just by nature of us, we have the ability to really hone in on relationship building, being part of something bigger. There is a lot of polarization right now. I will speak, specifically, obviously being in the States here. And I think naturally what I see in my circles and what I'm seeing on the landscape of women coming together in their different businesses and stuff like that is a coming together to how do we move forward together. And I think that is critical right now because the pendulum has swung so far the other way of separate from, again, many reasons that it's almost like the pattern disruptor, which I may be called. I was a little bit of a rebel, but it's sort of like what's the rebellious act is actually because there's so much polarization.
Yeah.
What would it be like if we come together? And I think women can lead that charge. And I think that us having access to resources, having access to funding, having access to skills and tools that help us build businesses is the conduit for us to change things.
Yeah.
I heard this great quote that says, "Money's not for getting things; it's for changing things."
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
And something like that saying may help someone who's like, "Oh, money, money's the root of all evil. What money's greed, might start to shift an awareness of, well, what if I'm a steward of this resource? And I choose, it comes to me, I sort of swiffer it around and then I put it back out into the world with conscious decision based on my values, based on what I believe. Even if it's at a small level in our household, what kind of foods we buy, what kind of clothes we put on our kids and choosing those things. And every dollar is so important now. I totally appreciate that and understand that. And it's like, how do we actually create we're praising money, but from a cherishing, like, okay, it's coming in and then it's going back. And I love the idea of stewardship around money. And as more women get access to funds coming through them and in our world, I think that really will change things.
Yeah.
And it's important for us to know skills like negotiation, ask for what you need. And not from not from what we know, how we knew it was to be like, oh, if I get what I need, then that person goes without. That's not the case.
No.
What if I get what I need and it actually
helps both of us?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
100%. And so how do you help women move past that internalized no and some of that shame to seek out and create something that is more abundant? So you've talked about how you're seeing women galvanized and coming together, and you're encouraging the coming together. How do we help, and how do you specifically help them transition to make that step, you know, and to help them recognize that it's okay to want more. It's okay to want the resource and to want to have the power. You know, I think I said in one of my blogs or one of my podcasts, you know, it's power is not a 4-letter word.
Yeah.
And we should, and it's the same for money. And we need to embrace that.
Yeah.
How do you help women with that?
Yeah. We almost have to bring it back down to neutral. Like money's neutral, power's neutral. What if we just brought it back down to 0?
Mm-hmm.
Redefine it for ourselves. What would I often ask this question in different areas and stuff like that, speaking and with my clients and just in general chit chat on a ski lift, who knows? If money was a person in your life and you were in an intimate relationship, close relationship with that entity, money, how might you describe that relationship?
Wow. That's an interesting one.
Right? So
Wow.
what we can do with something like that is start to be in awareness of what that answer or response feeling, maybe it's visceral feeling, maybe there's not necessarily a word to it, might be, and say, oh, that's okay. You know, like, it's like, bring it to 0. It's nothing. It doesn't necessarily mean anything because that's what's happened in the past. Now, if you wanted to improve this relationship, and power could be probably in the same, you know, in the same boat. What might you do? What might, if I was wanting in a relationship with someone and I was like, oh, this isn't really great. Not really, you know, I really want you here, but I really don't like you, or I don't trust you, or why would you come around anymore? You know? And we normalize, and then what kind of relationship would we want and what we might do? We would be understanding. We might be in communication. We might be, I often have my clients, it's a great exercise. And if anybody here's, you know, wants to take it on, awesome. I have people sit down and just pen to paper, old school, write money as if it's a person, a letter. Because at times I've done that. You know, if I've been in Discord with someone, I'll just sit down and write them a letter. Maybe I don't send it. Maybe I send it. Maybe I burn it in the full moon or whatever.
We've all burnt the letter.
Whatever. However, you get some of the stuff out of your head, and now you've changed. You're evoking a relationship with something here.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I love that so much, because I think especially if you're starting out and maybe you're starting your own business, and I know this is something we really want to talk about in the future, and hopefully you will come back. I'd love to have you again, where we can dedicate a whole show to starting your business. But there's so much fear around money, I think, especially when you are starting out, or maybe you're making a transition in your life and you're looking to invest somewhere else. Maybe you're going to buy a house somewhere else or what have you. And it is like a troubled relationship when you don't know how you're going to flex that resource for maximum benefit.
Yeah.
And I love the analogy of treating it like a person, like a relationship, because you would nurture it. You would want to nurture it. But if you didn't realize that you need to do that, you will resent it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You will deny the dependency you have on it. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a vulnerability in it that starts to break down it to be like, you know what? I mean, I just think of any sort of argument I've had, or some discord that I've had with a close friend, family member, intimate partner, or whatever, where I was like, you know what? My relationship with you is more important than my beliefs about
Mm.
what's happened or etc.
Mm-hmm.
Can we start over?
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah.
invitation here with
Yeah.
anyone who's struggling with this topic of money, because it's a huge topic. And this is just
Mm-hmm.
one small step perhaps to start anew, especially here
Mm-hmm.
we are at the beginning of the year. So
Mm-hmm.
there is a fresh start, and every day is a fresh start. Every week
Mm-hmm.
is a fresh start. We get to start again.
Mm-hmm.
And to look at it through the eyes of relational, and as women, relational, and as women, we have that natural capacity to be in relationship. So
Mm-hmm.
we're wanting that, and money is um, there is it is a zero there. It's neutral until
Yeah.
we come along and put our our touch on it, our fingerprint on it. And how do
Yeah.
we want to do that? So that's that invitation to the Dear Money letter. And as a bonus piece of that, if you wanted to, what I do have my clients do is after they write the letter and say sincerely, Christine, or whatever the salutation might be at the end there,
Yeah.
um, you switch roles with money, and you become money
Ah.
responding back. So, dear Christine, and it's just becomes this, and you step in and be in the place of money writing you back. So it's pretty profound, and lots of
I
can
love
come.
that. I think that's a brilliant idea. I would love to see my money letter to me.
Yeah.
It would probably say, please spend some more time here.
Yeah.
It
You're not
would.
alone. You're not alone. We're all doing this together.
And um, when we think about money and negotiation, which we've talked about, and so many parallels there, you talk about in your work women's conflict with money negotiation
Yeah.
and things that they can do for better positive results. You also talk about this thing called the triple win factor,
Yeah.
and I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, we've touched on it a little bit as we've been going through for sure. Uh, I call it generative. Being generative is right. And this, again, if we've had issues with money, however they've come about, whether it's seeing some other family member who's gone through tough times with money, or we've had tough times with money, it's not just about us anymore, and we bring it into a greater collective, there's a softening there that allows us to be in more of a power place with it, because we see it's not just about the selfish greed, it's just for me energy of money. It's actually like it's moving, it's currency. I mean, the core of currency is current, right? To
Yeah,
flow.
yeah.
It's flowing through us. So um when we bring back money into our how we get into negotiation and how we can have better results. When we bring in that idea of win-win-win,
Mm-hmm.
the triple win factor, the three-way win, the generative win, whatever you want to call it, we realize we're part of the bigger picture. We're part
Mm-hmm.
of the bigger one. And I like to, we use the words win and lose, and sort of like how I'm pulling it through. It's not just if I win, you lose. It's
Yeah.
if there's a benefit to me, I only play in this sandbox if it's a win for you too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's going to
I
feel
love
grounded.
that.
And of
Yeah.
course, then the other kids in the sandbox also
Benefit.
improve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. So, and
yeah.
it's an opportunity. It's like, what's the possibility? It actually evokes more options. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just, okay, this is the only way to do it with I'm putting the blinders on,
Mm-hmm.
fake blinders on. It's like, well, what's the opportunity? And I think it raises the vibration of what we're out doing in the world. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
I see as that win-win-win factor. It just feels good.
Yeah.
And a great example of that is, as someone's income increases, revenue increases, within their business, and that flow then goes out, and that exchange happens with the person that you're in that relationship with, the financial exchange with. There's like, we both win, and then the ripple effect of that out into our communities. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I feel like that is, if we can adopt, or even if it's just have a consideration
Mm-hmm.
of that, what might change in our worlds. I think it's an energetic exchange. It
Mm-hmm.
really ends up being that more than anything.
Yeah. And your term that you used earlier around stewardship really stays with me as well.
Yes.
And that's something that I also talk about in negotiation, which is when you have that mindset to leave it better than you found it
Yeah.
for both parties,
Yeah.
and focus on what you can do to give the other party what they're looking for.
Yeah.
It immediately builds a bridge back to you on how to solve this problem together.
Yeah. And better
And
solutions come out of that.
it does, because your perception is, without sounding huggy, it is enlightened, because
Yeah.
you've elevated the options in front of you.
Exactly.
So I love that.
It's
I
probably
think
like the
that,
win, the eternal, it just keeps going. It's
yeah,
like win, 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 win.
yeah. Well, because
And the
you've lifted your
negotiation.
gaze, yeah, on the horizon. You're not looking down, you're looking out and up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were going to say.
And again, right? I don't know. Negotiation also has this sort of traditionally like hard kind of construct
Mm-hmm.
way of looking at it. When we start to look at it through a win-win-win, or that, how could we both get benefit out of this? Like,
Yeah.
how could we both have fun out of this? I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
then it is an elevation. It is an
Yeah.
elevation. And things get done quicker, things, like more solutions happen.
Yeah.
It's just, it feels good. It
Yeah.
just
It
feels
feels
good.
good,
Yeah.
and it generates more. You will
Yeah.
typically generate more with that mindset than if you go in a very rigid, um, positional mindset.
Right.
And we talked about that it's early in the year, so a lot of people will be, beavering away on their New Year's resolutions and new business plans and all kinds of exciting things that they've set for themselves for the year. What's some really straightforward, practical advice that you could give women to do now? Even just a gentle start to get them going. You've talked about the money letter. Is there another one or two things that they could do today to just start themselves on that gentle journey of change with their relationship with money?
Yes. Well, one thing that's popping up for me just in our conversation here, because I know we're talking about things that are, it's money, there's shame, there's courage, there's all,
Mhm.
is inviting the audience to connect with someone, maybe it's their best friend, like a trusted person in their world, that they can have, hey, you know what? I heard this conversation on Kelly Confidential. Would you be up for listening, and can we talk about it?
Yeah.
And set the stage for no judgment. Stuff
Mhm.
might come up, but what do you think?
Yeah.
I call them money buddies, but whatever it is for you. But I wanted to, I invite the audience to have someone who is you trust,
Yeah.
because this is a tender subject. Um, but to be able to talk it out breaks down any of the embarrassment and the shame. And that's what happened
Yeah.
to me when I was going through my financial trauma, at the time when I lost my house to foreclosure and lost my job and went on unemployment. I went inward,
Mm.
and it almost brought me to tears, like, until I was like, got out of the proverbial laying on the bathroom floor
Yeah.
moment. I I didn't know to reach out to. I ended up reaching out to a financial advisor who made it kind
Yeah.
of even worse. So, had I known just like, who can I trust? And there is vulnerability in there. I will say that. But if you know someone like, hey, and the conversation, that's is why I do what I do. This is why I speak about this, because I want to open up the money conversation for all women so that we can strip away the shame and we actually can get to do the work that we want to do and fulfill the dreams that we want to dream.
Yeah.
And you can't do that if it's in secret. I think there's this topic now out there called like loud budgeting or something like that, where you're telling.
Loud budgeting. Oh, that sounds exciting. I like anything that's got loud in the front of it.
Telling people my goals. I'm telling people with who knows how it'll all shake out. So at the end of the year here, consider, is there anyone in your world that you would, again, an invitation might be, hey, I heard this podcast. I wanted to share with you. And let's maybe have a conversation over coffee or tea and see what comes of it. Same thing that we're doing here anyway.
Bring it out of the shadow.
Exactly. Bring it out of the shadow. So that's one of my faves. I was never a goals girl. I am totally now, because I know goals aren't about achieving them. It's about who we become in going for them. And so I would sit down, and I always say, set yourself up to win, little piece of chocolate, candle, whatever music preference you like, whatever.
Mood lighting.
Yeah, exactly. And say, okay, do a few deep breaths and come into yourself and put down some goals that you want to have for the year. That might be, maybe I read something about finance once a week, or I look at the subscriptions, right? We're such a subscription based world here. On my credit card or in my checking account, and see, does this really, am I still using this? Am I still not using it? So it's, probably a lot of advice that people have already heard before. And I think this may be another moment, maybe you hear it differently. And then the last piece, I just, I think of just this idea of asking for what we need. I think of asking in low stakes, practicing asking in low stakes situations. My petri dish of choice is the grocery store.
Do tell. I love this. I love homework.
This is where, in the store where, I'm 5'6", so I'm not super tall, but if I need something on the top shelf of, maybe asking the person who's taller down the aisle from me to grab that, when I probably could do it if I climb up on one level of the shelf. Asking for what you need in low stakes situations to practice for particularly bigger situations down the line.
I love that. And it delivers benefit instantly. I recommend that also when in some of my negotiation sessions. And one of the exercises I recommend is asking to be moved to a different table in a restaurant.
100%.
Because it's uncomfortable, but it allows you to flex your influencing skills and your communication skills and move past the awkward to get something that's important to you, So don't move arbitrarily just to, upset the waiter. But if you feel like there's a better table, then to practice this, you're so spot on. These smaller steps will yield fruit in asking for what you need and not just settling and absorbing the shortcomings.
Absolutely. And more often than not, we know this because we've been on that other side too. The person on the other side is wants to help, wants to make it good. You may not even know them, right? It's the server at the restaurant, or it's the gentleman down the aisle, they're like, sure. Hold on a sec. Let me get that for you. Or let me check what I can do. So
might be the first person they've talked to all darn day.
Right.
They're shelving, boxes. They're like, thank God somebody spoke to me.
Been talking to them all day. Yeah. Totally. Small asks, I think, are really where it's us reclaiming our power to get what we need in our lives, and
Yeah.
it moves us forward. So, yeah.
Excellent. Good. And finally, I know we're wrapping up, and I do really hope we have another one, because I would love to do this again with you, and focus on helping women to get going, starting their business. But how can people work with you? I'm going to include some all of your contacts in the show notes. But how do people work with you today? How can they get in contact with you? What are the different channels that they can follow?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing my book. And obviously, that is one way to get more information from me in a concise way. I am at christinemwalsh.com. So I know that probably will be in the show notes as
Yeah.
well. There's ways to contact me through there. I would love, in this conversation, I tend to, in these types of conversations, tend to stir up some stuff. So feel free to send an email. There's an email contact, and just let me know that you heard me here and that, this is what came up for you. I would love to hear from anyone who feels that they want to be witnessed in their money story. I have always worked with people one-on-one for most, I would say 80% of the time. I really like digging into the financial specifics of a business, person's life, and then their own inherent belief systems. I do have some small group programs that I've used because I do feel that we have created a lot of our money stuff in relationships to someone else, and we can actually unwind it quicker in relationship to someone else. So in group format, which I think is really powerful for women. Again, what we've been talking about of bringing women together and sharing in a non-judgment, safe container
Yeah.
that I create, and ensure that stays that way for women to say, oh, you know what? That's me too. Like, I've had a ton of debt. I don't know I
Yeah.
didn't know how to get out of it. I'm working my way. Oh, me too. I thought I was the only one, because this is the thing with money. We think we're the only ones, and
Yeah.
we're not. We're
Yeah.
not the only ones. So being able to be in that safe container has been really powerful too. So, speaking, and I hope another book about money is coming. I hear they're
Ooh,
like
that
potato
sounds
chips.
exciting.
So you can't just have one potato chip.
Oh, so does that mean you're starting on one? This is hot
I
off the
have one
press. Oh,
in around the idea of women and history of women and money, and it'll be something
oh,
called, yeah, along those
I
lines.
love that idea.
Yeah, so it's in the hopper.
Watch this space. It's so important, though. I think reflecting on where we've come from and
Yes,
having a finger on the history in our decision making,
yeah,
our journey to have more of a voice and more representation is so important.
yeah,
So I think that sounds exciting. A book
yes.
about the history, and wonderful. I look forward to hearing more about that and having you back on our show soon. Thank you again for being our guest on this episode about women, money, and the new face of power. I will share Christine's contact details, ways you can work with her, including a link to her book, in the show notes. Thank you again, Christine. Real pleasure having you here.
Thank you. You're welcome.